Without sales, your business can be compared to maybe just another expensive hobby. The truth is that for a lot of entrepreneurs just starting out and others who are introverted, sales can be difficult or chaotic, as the case may be. So today we'll be talking about getting your sales in your business organized. This is the Tech Your Business podcast where we break down technology, inform you about the latest in technology to help your business learn more, earn more, and do more. My name is Peter, and if you find getting started in sales difficult, if your sales process is all over the place and unpredictable, or if you just feel maybe you could do better in that aspect of your business, just grab a glass of your favorite drink. Mine is water right here and join us. So this will be a guest episode and we'll be speaking with Ruben Swartz, the founder of Mimiran, which he calls the fun anti-CRM for solo consultants who hate selling but love serving clients. So welcome to the show, Ruben.
Thanks for having me, Peter. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So when you say consultants who hate selling but love serving clients, can you expand on what that means when you say that?
I think a lot of people start a consulting business because they're good at doing the thing that they do, the particular service that they provide. Maybe they did it in a corporate job and now they want to go out on their own. Maybe they just really like helping people. And I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but a lot of these folks, they can do the work, they enjoy the work, they have no problem doing the work. And then when it comes to doing business development, to doing sales, suddenly they feel icky, they feel slimy, they don't want to do it, they feel awkward, and consequently, they don't grow the business the way they ought to, and they don't help the number of people that they ought to.
I can relate fully with that. I can relate fully because I always tell people like for the first about maybe almost 10 years of my business, I always try to hide behind ads, hide behind anything else just to avoid talking to clients. So I can fully relate with something like that. Um so can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm a consultant, or I was ironically a sales and marketing consultant for Fortune 500 companies for a long time, and like you, I was fine doing the work, but I didn't like doing the sales and marketing. And so I feel like a lot of people have a good excuse for that. When you're a sales and marketing consultant, it's much harder to make excuses. But long story
Yeah.
short, I realized that a lot of the advice and technology and processes that we use to help really large companies just makes things worse for independent consultants. I experienced it myself firsthand. And instead, what I want to do is make it easy for independent consultants to show up as themselves authentically, but actually be effective at growing their business and getting new clients.
Hmm. Oh, it's interesting. You talked earlier about these consultants feeling icky, feeling slimy when they have to go into sales and business development and things like that. So, can you discuss the probably the common aversions, the common aversions they face in this aspect?
Well, I think especially when you come from a corporate job where you don't actually do the frontline sales, and I came from a corporate job where I would be brought in to help with sales, but I wasn't really responsible for the whole thing. So I had a little window into it, but I didn't really understand how the whole process worked. And suddenly you need to actually bring in business or you can't pay the bills. This gets really scary. And I think unfortunately what tends to happen is instead of getting really focused and having lots of conversations with people, what we tend to do is instead try to convince everybody that we can be anything that they need. And that just makes the problem worse and worse.
Yes, so you just mentioned a lot of entrepreneurs here coming in from corporate where sales was handled for them. They were just a really small part of the entire process there, and they come into business and they discover that they have to handle sales and everything. And for some of them, like for me especially, I don't really, usually when they say sales, you see situations where people try to force people. in one way or the other to buy what they have to sell. I've been in a lot of sales situations like that. And for me, that's not really my style.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, what's the alternative you've seen
What
for getting up?
I think that's exactly right. I think what happens is you realize that you need to sell stuff. You try to convince the people that you know to buy what you have, and that's awkward, especially when you're not a salesperson. It just feels terrible and it's not very effective. And it's a natural reaction, but instead we want to go the other way. When sales seems hard, instead of going broader, we want to go narrow. We want to get much more specific about who we're trying to talk to, our ideal client. I sort of make the analogy of if you're a doctor and you specialize in shoulder surgery, let everyone know that you specialize in shoulder surgery. Don't stand outside the hospital waving at everyone who walks in saying, "Oh, I can treat your knee, I can treat your heart, I can treat your skin, whatever." No one wants to deal with that. If you're on an airplane and they ask for a doctor, maybe they'll take any doctor they can get, but that's not how it's working in the real world when we're not on an airplane. So don't act like that doctor trying to operate on every single person. Go the other way, get very specific. And even if you don't know very many of those people who match that ideal client criteria, the people you talk to, if you can describe who you're trying to meet effectively, they know lots of people. And the fact that you're not trying to sell them, you're just saying, "Hey, I fix people's shoulders," or whatever it is that you do. When they say, "Oh, well, gosh, I know someone who just hurt his shoulder. You need to talk to so and so." And you empower the people that you know to become like your virtual sales team. So
Yeah.
the natural reaction is to go broad. And instead, what we want to do is go narrow. And it's really scary to do that, especially when you feel like sales aren't coming in. And it doesn't matter how logical you make it sound. I think there's a part of our lizard brain that says, that's scary. I don't want to limit myself. So the only way that I've been able to trick myself into doing this is to say, do I want sales to be easy or hard? Right? That's another emotional lizard brain gut check. And I want it to be easy. I do not like sales. I don't want to make it hard. It's not the Olympics. You don't get more points for higher degree of difficulty or anything like that. Make it as easy as possible. So when you're wondering about narrowing your focus, getting very specific, ask yourself instead of, is this going to make my market larger or smaller? Because even the small version of your market's probably more than big enough. Instead, is this going to make sales easier for me or harder?
Hmm. So I think that's one good point. Going narrower, serving a specific group of people to make it easier, like you said, make sales easier for you. So when you have this, you talked about having these conversations and letting these people know how you can help them and how you can help probably who they know too. So there's over time that leads to a lot of conversations, that leads to a lot of things that you might not really remember because you might talk to this person and maybe you're supposed to follow up and you can't really remember you talked to that person or what discussion you had with that person. And that's where a CRM, like we mentioned earlier, comes in. So for the benefit of the audience, what's a CRM and why does it matter to a business?
Sure. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, which you'd think would be all about taking care of your customer relationships, but usually it means software to help your sales team get new customers. And the genesis of this whole category of software was back in the 90s to help the VP of sales keep track of what the sales team was doing, which is a very important thing for the VP of sales to be doing. The problem for independent consultants is they don't have a VP of sales. They're not a VP of sales. They don't have a sales team. They don't have a VP of marketing, et cetera. And so you check off this box, like you're saying, gosh, I need a CRM because I have to remember all this stuff, which is true. But then you drop in this big enterprise tool that has all kinds of dials and levers and switches that are just not even appropriate for you. But at the same time, they don't have some of the things you actually really need. So I like to tell people, yes, you need a CRM, but it's not about checking a box and saying, aha, I have a CRM, I'm done. CRM is a process that you do, whether you have a tool named CRM or not. everyone who's in business for themselves is doing CRM. You might be doing it more effectively or less effectively depending on how things are going, but you're already doing it. The question is, are you doing it well, and do you have a tool that supports you do some of the things you mentioned, like showing you what you talked about last time, letting you know when you need to talk to this person again? That's really where the fortune is, right? It's not just in collecting a whole bunch of names. If you are in a relationship business like consulting, you are in a conversation business, and you need to do two things. You need to get very specific about who you want to talk to. We mentioned that earlier, right? Getting very focused. And then two, you need to talk to those people and the people who know them. It's really that simple. And of course, there's a lot of nuance that goes along with how you do those things. But if you do those two things, you're going to be successful. And when you don't have time, or you're not sure how to do them, or you just feel like it's not something you want to mess with, and you don't do either or both of those things, that's when you really struggle to get new clients.
Hmm. Nice. And I agree with you about the talk about the CRM, because the first time I tried to use a CRM, that was like maybe 10 years ago or thereabouts. Signed up for it, logged in, and that was the last time I used it because I didn't understand what what on earth I was seeing, and it was just it was like, okay, this is supposed to solve my problem, but this is just a bigger problem than the problem I'm trying to solve. So I just left it out. So so that makes me really relate to when you talk about CRMs being built for a VP of sales to manage salespeople and everything, compared to a business person who has to do everything. So when you talk about the traditional CRM talked about for the traditional VP of sales CRM and a CRM for a business, what features are not necessary on those complicated types, and what are the core vital features that would help any business to stay in track, keep on track?
Well, I think generally the idea is the CRM is going to do similar things in both situations. But when you have a big sales team, the job of the CRM is to keep track of the sales reps. What are they doing? Can I have any idea whether I'm going to make my numbers this quarter? That's what the VP of sales wants to know. And when it's just you doing your business solo, or maybe you have a virtual assistant or something like that, but it's basically you still need to keep track of your sales and have some idea what's happening, but you don't need a ton of the user management features and fancy reporting. And you can get really wound up in pipeline reports. I know I've spent so much time staring at pipeline reports pretending like they meant something, when really I was just moving blocks around to make myself feel important, instead of just talking to people and seeing what was happening. And I think for the individual consultant who is also trying to do sales on the side, you want a way to make sure that you're nurturing your existing relationships and you're creating new ones. And so I take a little bit of a different view of this. I want it to be all about conversations, even for us introverts, right? Part of the problem is if we don't get in the habit of having conversations, if we only follow up with that really hot lead, then we feel all that pressure like we're a salesperson. And that's not what we want. Instead, if we feel like we're a doctor, we're going to check in on our patients every year, whatever the right frequency is. We have lots of conversations with interesting people. We have a good time. Some people are going to say, gosh, Peter, I think I need some help. What's it like to work with you? And it doesn't ever feel like a sales conversation. So Mimiran has a lot of stuff to help with that. It has a mission and positioning screen to help you figure out exactly who you want to talk to, and how you're different than everybody else. It tracks your referrals, because that's really the key part of the business is referrals. And that's not something that an enterprise CRM tracks. And there's lead magnets and proposals and e-signature and things like that in there as well. But the main idea is, let's get really specific about who we want to talk to, and let's have ongoing conversations with them, right? It's not enough to meet a bunch of people in a networking event and then not follow up with them, or you do that initial one-on-one and then you don't talk to them ever again, right? The magic in the relationship happens over time.
Hmm. I love that. So you talked about let's about being specific about who you want to talk to, about having regular conversations as a way of as the way of selling, nurturing relationships, creating new ones, and also engineering referrals in the process. But when we do this for a lot of businesses, when we do these things, there are times like, okay, 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 I'm supposed to have conversations with people. This week you wake up and you have like 50, 100 conversations, and then next week you forget about it. Would you advise a business structures this process you just described to
Mhm.
carry it out consistently over time?
Sure. First of all, I think there are going to be differences, right? When you are really busy with client work, it's very different than when you have no client work and you have all your time available to have conversations. So we should expect some variation. What we don't want is the feast or famine, where we're so busy with client work that we can't do any nurturing of the relationships. And so that when that project ends, now we have to start all over again. So what I tell people to do is make sure there's time blocked off in your calendar every week to have conversations with your clients, your past clients, your partners, your prospects. Mimiran has some tools to make this easy, but you can do it in any calendaring tool you want, but put that in your calendar proactively. It's like the people who say, "Hey, I want to get in shape. I'm going to go to the gym." And then if you don't put it in your calendar and you get to Friday and you think, gosh, I just got really busy. I could never make it to the gym versus the person who says, okay, this is when I have time. I'm going to put this Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to go to the gym, much more likely to happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen 100% of the time. There's always going to be some random thing that can crop up, some emergency, and that's okay. But the idea is that by default, we make time for this really important, crucial business activity. And we make it a habit. So it's not something special that we have to do out of desperation. It's just an ongoing part of what we do that hopefully we look forward to because we're spending time having fun conversations with people in our tribe, people we enjoy having conversations with, and we never feel like we have to go close somebody.
Hmm. When you talked about the gym, I smiled because I'm actually just getting back from the gym, and this is the shirt I wore down there. And
Me too. This is
funny
my gym
enough,
shirt under
oh wow.
here.
Funny enough, I have my calendar right in front of me and I have gym right here
All
from four
right.
to six.
You know what I'm talking about.
So you're totally right about that. So one thing you've talked about conversations a lot, but when you say a conversation for a consultant, what sort of structure, what sort of structure would you say this conversation would take?
Sure. Well, the details are going to vary, of course, depending on what kind of relationship you have and what the prior conversations were. But I think that the really critical thing is it's an actual conversation. It can be in person, it can be on Zoom, it can be on the phone, but it's not, oh, I had a conversation with someone because I sent them an email. That's not a conversation. And I know I spent years using that kind of automation, that kind of technology, thinking that I was nurturing my relationships, but really I was using technology to get out of conversations instead of get into them. I think there's nothing wrong with sending newsletters and social media and all that good stuff. It's great if you're using it to get into the conversations instead of the opposite, which is what the mistake I made for years.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that because a lot of times they say you want to do marketing and then you send out the email blast or you do an advert or something and or make a post online and you just okay, yeah, I've done something today. And and like you said, it's not really a conversation. So what you're saying is that a conversation is something like we're having now.
Right.
Yeah, is a conversation. But one challenge about this is that for a lot of solopreneurs, especially the introverts,
Hmm.
you're never going to catch them wanting to have a face-to-face conversation, either it's virtually or in real life. So from I know you've probably dealt with a lot of people with that kind of mind block or whatever. How would you advise they get over this block?
Well, I deal with that kind of person every time I look in the mirror. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think one of the things that I realized was I love having conversations with people when I want to have a conversation with that person, when I find them interesting, when we're talking about something that I find interesting, that's great. I don't like having conversations on someone else's terms. I don't like being at a giant conference where I have to go meet 100 people in 30 minutes. That kind of thing drives me nuts. But one thing that hopefully we learned from this pandemic is we have a lot of power to structure the way we network the way we want. So especially when you're introverted, you don't have to go to the 1,000 person conference and meet everybody. You probably already know 80% of the people you need to know. You're just not talking to them. But if you actually have a conversation with them, you're going to have a good time. And this was something that I decided I was going to do because I realized when I run into somebody at the grocery store or around town or something like that, or just end up on a random call with someone across the country, something like that, I have a great time. The conversations I don't like are when I feel like I'm in a sales call and I have to go close this person because it's the one referral I got this month. But if I don't have the other conversations, that's how I end up stuck feeling like I have to close that one person. But if I have the regular conversations, then I have a lot of people that might want to work with me. And it's more like we both get to decide, are we a good fit? It's not me trying to convince somebody else that I'm a good fit. And I think that's where, as an introvert, we can do a great job with this because we don't have to do it the way someone else says we need to network. We can do it the way we want to do it, have fun conversations with the people we find interesting. We're not being salesy. We're going to catch up and we're going to deepen the relationships that actually matter to us. And as introverts, one of the things that I think is really important is generally we're probably better at listening than people who are more extroverted. And that's really helpful when you're having conversations with people.
That's actually really true because someone said when you're a good listener, you tend to get people to open up more to you. You tend to get people to actually open up more to you because and that's one thing that's true because for me I've never been known as a big talker. I think people that knew me growing up are shocked when they see me on video doing a podcast. Like, where did this come from?
Right.
Yeah, like, where did this come from? But the funny thing is that at the end of the day, like you said, when you have conversations you really enjoy, because one thing I enjoy about this podcasting is, first of all, it has gotten me out of that comfort zone of hiding behind, like you said, using technology to get out of conversations. So it has gotten me out of that comfort zone. And at the end of the day, I talk to a lot of interesting people. I learn a lot, actually. I learn a whole lot. And it's just it's something I actually look forward to. The first
Yes.
like 4 or 5 episodes, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I used to be I used to be tense
Hmm.
getting on, but now I look forward to new episodes and new conversations and all that. So I really get what you say about that. I really get what you say about that. So going over time, you've had your business Mimiran for a really long time. What would you say to your younger self about growing the business, about the direction you're taking the business to? What if you're to meet your younger self starting out Mimiran? What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to yourself?
Well, I think it's a lot of what we've talked about here already, Peter, in the sense of let's get very specific about who I want to work with and then have a bunch of conversations with people in that world instead of feeling like, oh, okay, I've got to go close some people. And I made all the mistakes that I've talked about earlier, right? Trying to be too broad, trying to be too many things to too many different people. And forgetting in some cases that it's hard work and not every day is a picnic, but it's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be enjoying this.
Yeah. So one thing people might say is that you talk about having sales conversations as against the normal sales process where they say, oh, you set an appointment, you do the what do you call it, the discovery, and then you close and all that. So using this method of selling, going with this method of selling, how effective is it, and how scalable also is it?
Well, I think it's as an effective and a scalable method as you want to make it. And I think the everyone has a different goal for their business, right? My tribe is people who really want to be solos. They don't necessarily want to grow a huge team. I've had some people do that and they might graduate to a more traditional CRM. That's totally fine. So it really depends on exactly what you're trying to do. But the idea is by sort of being the very specialized shoulder doctor, I get I get a reputation for the people who have certain shoulder problems. They're going to come to me, they're going to find me online, they're going to get referred to me by their friends, by my colleagues, etc. And I can spend my day talking about shoulder issues, for example, and I don't necessarily have to say, gosh, I've got to go close 30% of these people and get them into surgery. It's just let me talk about people's shoulders, which is the thing that maybe as an orthopedic surgeon, I really find fascinating and I love helping people with that. And the more specific you can get, the more scalable you can be because there's less effort involved in converting those people to clients and you can charge more. You're going to be the default choice. And I think there's this notion of I've got to close people from the discovery call. I'm going to do a one call close or a two call close or whatever it is. That's fine for certain businesses, but I don't think it's great for a true relationship business. But the more you can do to set yourself up as the specialist in your area, the more likely it is. And I don't like to think of it as closing the sale. I like to think of it as opening the next phase of the relationship. The more likely it is that person's going to say, gosh, Peter, this sounds amazing. When can we start working together?
Yeah, and I think one other advantage of this kind of process is that at the end of the day, you end up having a good relationship with your clients because where you have this closing of trying to, I think sometimes it's I feel it's trying to psychologically coerce clients into buying sometimes what they don't really need. A lot of
Hmm.
times, a lot of them feel they have this block. There's something they feel somehow a lot of time, even though they patronize, even though they bought from you, as against you have a client who you've built a relationship with. Most times you don't even really need to sell. They're the ones who ask, okay, like you said, how can I work with you? I've gotten that a couple of times before. And the funny thing is that these clients who you grow that kind of relationship with, a lot of times after you work with them, you remain friends, you end up just yeah, you end up in a different relationship with them than just where you just take the clients as just numbers you have to close and all that. So it's something I really agree with too. It's something I really agree with too. So for the business owners who are your target market, that's the consultants, the solopreneurs, and all that, you've given you the best piece of advice for yourself, for your younger self. Would that be the same advice you give to them?
Well, it's funny because my whole mission has changed from helping these ginormous companies make more profit and all that to basically helping my past self, right, in other people. Once I realized that all these problems I was having were not because I was uniquely incompetent, it was because the world is actually really uh, built for the needs of these big companies with big budgets. And I should know I was part of that world, right? I was part of the sales and marketing industrial complex. And when you're an independent consultant, you get a lot of this advice that's really targeted at these bigger companies. And then you think, gosh, why is this not working for me? Why am I so frustrated? And I went through that a lot. And then I found that there's a lot of other people going through the same thing. And I thought, well, maybe some of my suffering can do some good and spare some people and they can do things the easy way instead of the way I had to learn things.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, for listeners who would like to learn more about your style of selling, your get more advice from you, like some things you've talked about have really validated a lot of things I believe in. For listeners who would like to use your product Mimiran and anything else, how can they reach you?
You can find out more at mimiran.com. That's MIMIRAN.com. Not just sign up for a free trial of the tool, but there's proposal templates, lead magnet ideas, a whole bunch of free resources there. And I'm also the host and chief nerd on the Sales for Nerds podcast.
All right. So the Mimiran.com, the Sales for Nerds podcast. If you want to reach out to Reuben, you can do that there, and it will be in the show notes once this episode goes live. So thank you so much, Ruben, for coming on the Tech Your Business podcast.
Thanks for having me, Peter. And I'm glad we both got our workout in today.
Definitely. All right. And for the guests, for the listeners, did you get any value from this episode? If you did, please share with anyone you know. It would help. With who has challenges with sales, who has challenges with selling in the traditional way, who has challenges with organizing their sales process or anything. And if you want to be the first to know when we post more helpful content like this for your business, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're seeing us or hearing our voices on. So till next week, when we come back with a new episode of how to tech your business, just scroll down. We have like 70 plus episodes. Go through, continue drinking whatever you enjoy drinking, and see you next week. Bye for now.